All right, well, welcome to episode, 5. Man, we're on 5 of the Persuasion by the Pint podcast. And Sean, before we get started, what are we drinking on this episode?
Well, Jonathan, today we have... what do we have? Hold on, let me swing the mic. So we have got one of my favorite brands, which is a Kentucky... Who's the actual brewer? Do you know the brewer? Like the Kentucky Bourbon Ale.
Yep.
The Barrel Age Seasonal Series. So this is a seasonal. So as we're recording this, it's October, end of October. So that means all things pumpkin spice, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you can't get through October without...
Oktoberfest, pumpkin spice, all of that stuff.
Yeah, so, which is funny because, like, you couldn't actually get to pumpkin spice until probably November to make it because pumpkin's got to grow during October. But anyway, we won't go there. So Kentucky Pumpkin Barrel Ale. So we record these episodes in batches, like a good beer and whiskey. So in the previous episode, we were having whiskey. So I thought this was a good follow-up to that whiskey that we had, which was really good.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we put those...
Liquor before beer, never fear. So we're good there.
Beer before liquor makes you sicker? Is that what something like that?
Exactly.
Problem is those rhyme either way. So like once you're drunk, it's like...
Right, it doesn't matter.
So, in my older age, not my 20s, is now it's just moderation.
Yes.
Then you don't have to remember rhymes.
Right, absolutely.
Just moderation.
Just moderation, that's all you got to remember. This is good, by the way.
It is good.
I've never had this.
Pumpkin Barrel Ale. So it is... about 10%. So high gravity.
Okay.
It's right on the line of that high gravity.
Local, who's the...
Lexington, Kentucky.
Okay, Lexington. Great place. Great area.
KentuckyAle.com. So in the show notes, we'll also put the links to the books we're talking about. We'll also put the links to, if we can find the links, we'll put the links to the different beverages that we're talking about. So I am really excited about what we're talking about today.
Yeah, this is...
I've been in the business of copywriting, sales for quite a while. Copywriting alone, 10 years. The past 10 years, I got into it in 2008. Now I'm in coaching. Use a lot of the principles of sales and copywriting and persuasion and influence in my coaching to help people make changes in their life.
Sure.
But I got to tell you, I had never heard of this book.
Yeah.
And it's actually a PDF that I printed out. You printed yours out.
Yeah.
You shared it with me so we could talk about it during these shows. And I got to tell you, this is good stuff. Like it's
deep.
It's deep, and it's stuff that I've seen people touch on. Ben Settle, for instance.
Yeah, he's great.
He talks about some of this stuff,
right,
but not in such a clear, concise way as this is laid out. And what is the name of the book that we're talking about?
It is The Forbidden Keys to Persuasion. It is a manual. It's probably, 130, 140 pages?
142.
142.
What my...
And again, on the show notes for this week's episode, we will put the link that you can find this. It's like a $20...
crazy good
$20 report. I mean, which is crazy. I mean, I had a buddy, and I had never heard of this guy either, Blair Warren. It's funny you say that because I'd never heard of this, and I was talking to a buddy a few weeks ago who's he's in the insurance business, but he's doing copywriting now too. And we were talking. He had some questions about podcasting. He wanted to talk to me about. He had some things that he had a client that had questions about podcasts, so he contacted me, and we were talking, and he mentioned this, and I'm like, I have never heard of that, but it sounds really interesting. And he said, check it out. It'll be the best $20 you ever spent. So I downloaded it, and it is good. It's really good.
Yeah, and like I said, I've been around a lot of copy books that are deep, and copywriters geek out on different books and things like that. And this is like, the name sounds vaguely familiar, so I don't know if Blair Warren used to write for Agora or some of the companies that I wrote for. And this was written around that time that I got into copy.
Yeah.
2000. It says that it was first in July 2005, and then third edition was 2007.
Right.
And now it's available. But yeah, so I got into copyright in 2008, and I had not really ever crossed my path. And
sure.
and I've read a lot of the classics. I mean, I've got a couple 100-year-old copyrighted books that are really good. And Bruce.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's some
this
really
one
good stuff.
For some reason, has escaped me, but here we are.
Now that we build this up, we're going to give you some. We're not just going to leave you hanging.
I think we just end it right there.
We just leave it right there. Okay, done. The episode's done. We've promoted this. We've hyped
the affiliate link there, and we're done.
We're done. Go check it out.
No, now, go ahead.
So we're going to talk about mind control, the cult mechanics of cult and mind control, which I find it interesting that it's right before Halloween we're doing this stuff. It is just a coincidence, but. We talked to...
Or is it?
Or is it? That's right. You never know. Last week, we kind of hinted on... We were discussing the 6 Principles of Influence by Cialdini. We were touching on some of the examples of cults, the drinking the Kool-Aid, and how, cult leaders often get people to follow in or buy into their vision of what they want them to do, and then they end up drinking cyanide and, killing a bunch of people. But,
right.
People aren't stupid. It gets back, our previous episode, we talked about people have their own motivating factors, so people aren't, this isn't, as much as we say mind control, this isn't like hypnotism or anything like that, but it is obviously tapping into what people already want. And again, that's key. There's a lot of crossover here, and there's a lot of similarities in that you're looking at what people are already primed to do certain things, and what you're doing is tapping into that.
Exactly. Yeah, we've mentioned that before, and we'll mention it again and again. The marketers that fail, and the salespeople that fail, the parents that fail, are the people who try to bring in their own manipulation. They're trying to tell people what to do. They're trying to create a desire or create something that isn't there. Yeah. The masters of this stuff, the masters of persuasion and influence, understand I've got to find the already existing desire, as Eugene Schwartz says, and I've got to bend my product, my pitch, my beliefs about the world, beliefs, the way I parent, I've got to swing that around to their point of view, to their existing desire. And when you learn how to do that, it is incredibly effective.
Sure.
And I think this, I'll just read the first sentence here in this section. It says, our next 2 lessons detail a 3-tiered approach cults use to gain, keep, and exercise control over other people. And there's 3 things: meeting hidden addictions, inducing isolation, and gaslighting. So today and probably the next episode, we're going to talk about the hidden addictions. There's 7 hidden addictions. We're going to go through the first 3, or try to, on this episode, and then we'll wrap up in another episode, the next episode. So there's a teaser for the next episode for you. We'll finish up with the 7 hidden addictions, and then we can continue going, with the isolation and the gaslighting.
Yeah.
And when you hear these, you're going to see them everywhere in really good marketers. Yeah. And I can think of a couple off the top of my head that are really good at using these things, who my guess is they've read these books, or they've read someone who has read this book. So it's really
my
good.
wife accused me of gaslighting. This was several weeks back. I have no idea what she was talking about. What is gaslighting?
Yeah, I mean,
so I had to look it up.
I've heard the term, but it'll be fun to let our audience in on what that actually means and how that actually works. But first, we're going to talk about hidden addictions.
Addictions, which people are out there saying, "What are you talking about? Addictions?" I don't have any addictions.
Oh, if that was only true, you'd be bulletproof. We all have addictions, So and they're hidden, and they're what really drive us.
Yep.
Not what we think drives us in a lot of cases, and not in a lot of cases we're not even aware that this is what drives us.
True.
And the people that are aware, including the people on Madison Avenue, including people that write copy for stock newsletters, they know this stuff inside and out. And some of them use it for good. Some of them use it for their own personal gain at the expense of the customer.
Yeah.
And, that may be a little contrarian, but I've been behind the scenes with some different companies, and some people use it correctly. Some people don't. Some people use it short term, as we talked about last episode. Some people take a long-term view and use this for the client's benefit to get them to take action they wouldn't normally take.
Right.
And some people use it short-term for quick profits.
Yeah.
So I will let you roll with hidden addiction number 1 if you've got it there.
Yeah. Yeah, and before that, I found it very interesting when he talks about the attempts at discovering what people want. So remember, I don't know if you remember that, but he gives
I had a side note in another book about that. So.
Yeah, kind of a multiple choice. And, obviously, and I'll read you the multiple choice because I find it interesting because it kind of throws you off. So which of the following do you think is the best way to discover what other people truly want? A, consult your astrology chart.
Oh, yeah.
B, hire a psychic to do readings for them. C, look up their years of birth on a placement in a Chinese restaurant to learn about their personality.
I like that option because it means food's there.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of I like that better than the what was it? B, hire psychic readings. Yeah, I'm not too keen on that. But and then lastly, D, ask them what they want, which seems like the obvious answer, but is that true?
Yeah, the answer is no. And when I read that, I was reminded immediately of Ryan Levesque, who has the book called Ask.
Yeah.
And he does he has this thing he's known for with the survey funnels, quiz funnels type stuff to get people engaged. And he says in that book, that people don't know what they want, but they do know what they don't want. And he gives an example that I think is brilliant. If you got a group of friends or a couple of couples in a car and you're trying to decide where to go to dinner, or either just you and your wife or you and your significant other, and you say, where do you want to go for dinner? You're like, I don't know. Like nobody knows.
Yeah.
But as soon as somebody suggests something, well, let's do pizza. No, I don't want pizza.
Right.
We had pizza. Like they immediately know what they don't want.
Right.
But people rarely know
what they really
and can articulate what they want. And I think that's a great distinction. And that's a whole nother book that we can get into down the road. But Ask by Ryan Levesque is a great book.
Yeah.
That if you're kind of looking.
I remember Steve Jobs was famous for saying, they don't make products based on what people think they want.
Right.
He was smart enough to understand that people don't know what they want until we create it.
And that sounds contradictory to what we said earlier about tapping into a desire.
Right.
But what Steve Jobs understood was that there was a desire. So let's take the iPod, for example, right? There was a desire for people to listen to music on the go. That's been around for a long time, right? You whistle while you work. Going back, before recorded music, people hummed, they sang, whatever. Old spirituals while you're out in the field working or whatever. Like people have wanted music around them while they're doing stuff. Right. And then you had in the 80s, you had the Sony Walkman that ate through batteries like crazy.
Right.
and
gnawed up some tapes along the way too.
But had you asked a group of people, what do you want? Yeah. Nobody would have come up with the answer. I'd like a digital, a device that holds music digitally that I can carry with me. Like they wouldn't have known to articulate that, right?
They wouldn't have said, I'd like 1,000 songs in my pocket.
Right. They would have said, I really like the Walkman, but I don't like that it eats batteries. Right. So they know what they don't want, but they don't necessarily know what they do want.
They could list off the things they didn't like about a Sony Walkman.
Right. Then it's your job if you're a product creator like Apple is, to take that information and to put it into a package that fulfills the already existing desire.
Sure. Absolutely.
So it's not, I just wanted to cover that because I don't want people to think that, you're saying one thing over here. It's not even a paradox. It's kind of just two sides of the same coin.
Right.
You just have to understand where that's at. So as you're creating products or services, what is it that people don't like?
Yeah.
And they can usually, and as a salesperson, like ask people what they don't like and they can rattle off a list.
Bingo. Yeah.
And you can then decide, okay, well, my product doesn't it has solved that problem.
Right.
And a lot of times, if you can just solve one of the 10 problems they ask for, that's enough to get them to switch to your product or service.
Yep, absolutely.
All right.
So let's talk about these. Let's talk about these hidden addictions that we all have, and we just don't want to admit that we have. So, hidden addiction 1: people need to feel needed.
Whew. That one is loaded.
It is loaded.
I mean,
because, and who can't argue with that? I mean, really.
Yeah, it's not fun to admit.
No.
That you need to be needed, but it drives. I was actually sharing these ideas with somebody, one of my people that's helping me with some marketing and things like that for my coaching business. And we have it's on Teamwork. It's not Slack, but it's like Slack. So we've got a chat thread that we use. And I was listing out, I was like, hey man, I don't know if you read this book, and we're talking about it on our podcast today. Here's 3 things we're going to be talking about. And I kind of just laid out the first 3. And as I was writing and, typing, this one, I realized that like I was putting this in the thread because I wanted to feel needed.
Right.
Like I wanted to be seen as smart.
Sure.
I wanted to be seen as someone who could add value to the conversation, because they do a lot of marketing. So, I was like, oh, maybe they'll like me more if I put this good content in here. And that's really what content marketing is all about, right? It is. I mean, it's like, if I do really good content, if I do a good YouTube video or do a good blog post, then people are going to need to read me, and I'll be needed.
Right.
It's a very primal core desire. Yeah. I mean, it just.
Well, it's like we when we talked about liking last week, using in the liking, the principle of liking is, what lies behind that is that all people want to feel needed or wanted. In liking, if you can make people feel needed, if you can be genuinely interested in people, that other person, by talking about them, what their wants, needs are. People want to feel like, my opinion is important, or what I think is important.
Or my skills or my whatever. He gives a great example in the book. He says, imagine a cult leader. They're kind of up there. They're pitching their thing to a group, and there's one person there. In this case, he said a woman. There's a woman there who's like, not quite buying it.
Yeah.
And then he picks up, right? The cult leader picks up on it.
Right.
So he turns to the woman and he says, I understand that you're really good at X, whatever X is, right? Maybe it's administrative, maybe it's organizing people, maybe it's cooking a great meal. I don't want to be sexist or anything, but whatever that skill is that he knows that she has, he talks directly to that and says, like, we could really do big things if we had your skill set in this organization. Right. And that like totally turns her, because it may be the first time in her life, or it may be the first time in a long time that someone has said, I need you and who you are and what you bring to the table. Yeah. And most people, because of the fact that we're so busy in our society, and I'm guilty of this myself, I don't tell people enough, appreciate them enough, acknowledge them enough. So when they do get it, whether it's my wife, my kids, my customers, whoever, friends, when somebody steps in and fills that need that I'm not, whether it's my competition or whoever, they're going to jump on that.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think this is saying. And it's
it's basically the foundation of every cult is that you've got people that have a need to feel like they have a purpose. Right. And they have a contributing purpose to some end goal. I find it interesting. Rarely do you find people in cults that are, and this is not to be insulting, but you don't find people that are typically at the top of their game, that are in cults. You find people that have been overlooked. And that doesn't mean that they don't have a skill set to offer, or they don't have something to contribute. They have gifts, but they've, a lot of times they've been overlooked. And then you find somebody that appreciates what they offer,
in many cases, I think they've probably been around very selfish people.
Yeah, sure.
Who don't acknowledge them.
Absolutely.
And so when they do get that, it's
Right.
just, it's like a bright light.
Yeah.
Like it really attracts them like a moth to a flame.
Sure.
Yeah, it's crazy power. I had another thought, but I lost it. So if it pops back,
Politics. This works in. I mean, we can talk about cults. We can talk about politics, but
That's what I
people
was gonna
want to
say,
belong.
Yeah. Volunteer organizations are built
Yes.
on this,
Right?
Like, one of my favorite charities is Charity Water.
Yeah.
They've done a really good job marketing, making charity cool again. I was actually listening to a podcast today with Sean Stevenson, the model health guy, and the founder of Charity Water, Scott Harrison. And they were. I mean, he was talking about how when he started that charity, they were very uncool.
Yeah.
And it made me thinking about this and that at the same time. It made me realize that it's not just cults, but it's also any volunteer organization.
Sure.
The only reason they can the ones that succeed really well are the ones that tap into that need that people have to be needed.
Right.
Right. If I'm a doctor and I'm over here, I could be making 7 figures over here as a cardiologist. But if nobody's valuing me on day to day, because that's just my job, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, regardless of the size of the check. And then somebody tells me that, oh, there's these people in Africa that really need you, can't afford surgery.
Yeah.
I'm on a boat.
Absolutely. And you see that
tomorrow to help those people because I'll actually be appreciated and acknowledged there.
Right. All right. So let's talk about what's moving on. Hidden addiction number 2.
Hidden addiction number 2. That's deceptively hard to say. Hidden addiction. Can I just say that? Because I feel like I'm stumbling over it. So I don't think it's just the beer. I think it's
no. It is.
It's
hidden addiction.
It's a lot of D's.
Hidden addiction.
Hidden addiction number 2 is. So the way he writes it in the book is when aware of an impasse, people will do anything to gain a sense of hope. I think you can simplify this and just say people will do anything to gain a sense of hope.
Yeah.
Hopelessness. I mean, even in the Bible, you go back to the Proverbs. Hope deferred makes a heart sick. Like whether the
people have no vision, they perish. People want to have a kind
you
of.
don't have anything to look forward to, and this is the basis of a lot of movies and a lot of stories and books. Is that there's this part of civilization that has lost hope, and then there's this savior that comes along or a hero that comes along and offers hope. I mean, it's the base. It's so primal that it's in a lot of our storytelling.
Yep.
And we kind of overlook it, but a good marketer, you talk about Nike, and this was again in the it's in the podcast I was listening to today with Scott and Sean Stevenson, was that he for years the way they marketed charity organizations was the old Sally Struthers, the sad music, the slow motion, the sick person like locks eyes with the camera.
Yeah.
It's a lot of guilt.
Sure.
Right. But nobody else, not nobody, most other companies in the world don't market like that. Right? Nike doesn't say you're fat and lazy. This is their words on the podcast that I'm paraphrasing. Scott he said, Nike didn't say you're fat, lazy, you need to get off the couch. They don't guilt you into buying Nike shoes, right?
Of course not.
It's aspirational. Like, hey, there's hope. Like, inspiring. You can be an athlete too. All you need to do is wear the same shoes as athletes. And it gives people hope. Well, if I just have the right shoes, then maybe I can also be whatever. Now, that's going to the extreme, but the point is there that if you can give people hope, they will follow you to the end of the world.
Hope and change.
Hope moves countries.
Hey, political campaigns have been built on
hope.
On hope, yeah,
absolutely.
Hope alone. And
regardless
regardless of politics, I think Obama was brilliant in the fact that he used that to, in his campaign.
And really, if you follow Trump, whether you like Obama or Trump or whatever, doesn't matter. That's not the point of this episode.
Absolutely.
But the message was the same, actually. Right. You had hope and change. You had make America great again.
Yeah.
It's the same message.
Right. Who wouldn't argue with that? Make America great again? Come on.
Yeah, and some people say, oh, America's already great. It doesn't matter, because to that base that they were going after, that they were trying to activate, it was the same message, hope.
Right.
Like, it wasn't the word hope. Obviously in Obama's hope and change, he used the word. It was already used, so you can't follow up.
No.
You can't be a copycat, right?
Exactly.
So whoever was in charge of the Trump campaign with Make America Great Again, it's the same exact emotion. There's hope.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to change direction. We're going to go in a different direction.
And it gives whatever side, it gives them hope.
Right.
Yeah. So,
it pisses the other side off. But, the point is you have to activate. In politics, you've got to activate the base that was least activated in the previous election. That's really the name of the game.
Yeah. And
so you've got to stir up hope in that demographic, that side of the aisle, so to speak. So hope. People will. He says it, people will do anything to gain a sense of hope. Like, they don't even have to get the result at first.
Right.
They will follow you just for the hope.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. And
hope alone.
And a lot of companies do stop there.
Yeah.
Now, and that's a problem, for another show, but if you want long-term influence, but you can definitely get people to begin to follow you just for hope.
Yeah.
Hope alone.
All right, so we're going to stop there, and we're going to continue on the hidden addictions on our next episode.
All right.